I want to start off today's show by telling you a story about a very special individual, Rabishna Zman of Liadi. You probably never heard of him. I mean, he's an obscure figure in Jewish history, but very important to me and to the group that I belong with called Chabad. This is a story that takes place on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year. Now, many of you out there who are not familiar with the Jewish religion, and even those Jews who are familiar, don't know all the rules of regulations of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is called the Day of Atonement. It is the one day of the year where Jews gather together in synagogue and ask God to forgive them for all of the sins that they've done throughout the entire year. Whether they spoke for some gossip, they did things that they weren't proud of, whatever it was, stole something, God wants to forgive them, and He asks and He looks at them to pray to Him for forgiveness. Now, because it is such a solemn day, the rabbis had instituted that no work is to be done on Yom Kippur. It is forbidden to go to work or to drive on Yom Kippur or to use a phone on Yom Kippur, to use electricity. It is a day that is completely dedicated, 25 hours dedicated to the service of the Lord. You could sleep on Yom Kippur, and of course, obviously, you have to sleep in order to be able to pray the next day. But any mundane act of lighting a match, making a fire, completely forbidden. And it's important for you to realize that these are the rules, because you're going to hear this amazing story that happened. The Alter Rebbe, Rabishna Zman, was the rabbi of this congregation, a very small town in Russia, late in the 1700s. And it was on this Yom Kippur day, when all of a sudden, at the height of the service, that means just before the sun was about to set, at what we call the Ne'ilah service, the service that was going to close the gates of repentance, when all the congregation was pouring out their heart, they were crying to the Almighty to please forgive them for anything that gone wrong, and not only to forgive them for the past year, but to inscribe them and to ensure that they were going to get a successful, healthy, and happy new year. At the height of this service, the rabbi suddenly stops the service. Everybody is shocked. He turns around and walks out of the synagogue. Where's he going? What's going on? Everybody looks at themselves in amazement. This is Yom Kippur. Could you imagine what's going on over here? The rabbi walks down the street. It's starting to get dark. He passes one lane, goes down another street, goes through another lane, and finally at the outskirts of town, there's a little hovel, a broken down hatch. He goes into this house. Laying on the bed is a woman, and next to her is a baby, and the baby is crying. The rabbi looks at the refrigerator. There's nothing to feed the baby with. The house is cold. This is Russia. This is Russia in the wintertime. I mean, Yom Kippur comes out sometimes in late October. There's a chill in the air. There's no wood in the fireplace to heat up the house. The woman is laying in bed with the blankets, but she's cold, and the baby is cold and hungry. The rabbi, on Yom Kippur himself, goes, takes an axe, chops down a tree, cuts the tree up, takes the branches and takes a pile of wood and starts a fire. Then goes out and gets some milk and brings it up and warms the milk up for the baby and feeds the baby. Then goes and gets some clothes and clothes the woman. All on Yom Kippur day. When his followers, when the rest of the congregation realized what the rabbi was doing, they ran to him and they said, "Rabbi, what is going on over here? Why on Yom Kippur, you of all people, go down? You could have sent someone to rescue this woman. Why did you have to go yourself on this special holy day during services?" And the rabbi said, "Ladies and gentlemen, because I want to teach you a very important commandment, a very important lesson. There are a number of ways of doing charity. The easiest way is to write a check, to the Red Cross, Salvation Army, other organizations that help the needy, feed the poor, clothe the naked. That's one way. Another way is to actually do something, to roll up your sleeves, to seek out those that are downtrodden, to go to them and to minister to them, to minister to not their spiritual needs, to literally minister to their physical needs. I saw and I realized that this woman has no one to help her. Nobody, no husband, no parents. The baby was hungry. The baby was cold. And even though that I was at the height of my spiritual service, it was just about to close on Yom Kippur when everybody should have been thinking about themselves, I realized, no, I can't think about myself. I need to think about somebody else. And that's why I myself went. I wanted to gather the merit. I wanted to have the blessing of helping out this woman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an unbelievable story that takes place on an unbelievable human being. His name, Rabishna Zalman of Liadi. We're going to call him today on our show Rabbi Zalman. It's easier to remember that. This Rabbi Zalman was an incredible individual. And the reason why I bring him up today is because in the next few days we are going to celebrate a special event that took place in his life. What is that? His release from prison. You look at me and you say, what? His release from prison? A rabbi, a spiritual leader of a congregation, was put in prison? I say yes. He was in prison. And not only was he in prison, he was on death row. He was condemned to die. And why was he condemned to die, my friends? Well, that is really an interesting story. One that I have to teach you a little bit about Jewish history. Early in the 1700s, there came around a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Sol Baal Shem Tov, who founded a movement that you might have heard of called Hasidim. Hasidim were revolutionaries. Hasidim were the ones that broke apart the establishment. What was this revolution all about? Well, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of this revolutionary movement, saw that services that the establishment were running in their synagogues were very static, very boring, very plain. There was no life, there was no enthusiasm, there was no passion, there was no fire. As well as many of the rabbis were corrupt. And the Baal Shem Tov went around and he said, ladies and gentlemen, there's a better way. We can do it better. We can really enliven this up. We can bring some spirit into this movement. Judaism doesn't have to be cold and detached, morose and forlorn and melancholy. Judaism is all about joy and prayer. It's all about connecting. And he went around from town to town to town talking about his new way of practicing Judaism. And he won many, many, many converts over. One of the converts that he won over was a fellow by the name of Reb Dov Ber of Mezrich. And to make a long story short, Rabbi Zalman became Reb Dov Ber's disciple. He became a chassid. Now, his own family, there were many people that were against him going to study in this place with Reb Dov Ber. But he decided, since he was at a young age a very recognized and great scholar, that at the age of 13 he had already mastered all of the works of the Talmud. At the age of 13, he was able to recite the Talmud by heart, and even more so, that he decided he needs to learn how to pray. So he went to this town called Mezrich. And in Mezrich, he hooked up with this group of Hasidim, and he stayed there. Reb Zalman was an unbelievable talented man. Not only was he a great scholar, but he was a tremendous organizer. And when it came his turn to be appointed as a rabbi of a particular town, he went to Liadi, and he became the rabbi there. Now, don't think for a moment that the opposition that the Baal Shem Tov came to to enliven, they believed that this was an overthrow, and they fought back. They put an excommunication against the Hasidim. They fought Hasidim tooth and nail. They were called the opponents. And the opponents and the Hasidim for many years were bitter enemies, bitter rivals. In a town where the opponents held a stronghold, it was almost forbidden to be a Hasid. It was very dangerous to be a Hasid. And God forbid that if a daughter of an opponent's family married a Hasidic man, oh my gosh, the family would excommunicate her and they would disown her. That's how bitter the rivalry was. The Alter Rebbe, Reb Zalman, became a force and a great leader within the Hasidic movement. And as he rose to prominence, the opposition went strong against him and really worked hard to denounce him. When the opponents saw that they would not be able to vanquish the Hasidim in a battle of hearts and minds of the Jewish people, they did something treacherous. they went out to the Russian authorities. And they went to the Tsar and they told the Tsar, you know what, Tsar? Rabbi Zalman of Liadi is supporting your enemies. What did they mean? Rabbi Zalman was collecting money to send to poor Jews living in Israel. Israel at that time was under the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire never got along. So the opponents convinced the Tsar and his ministers that Rabbi Zalman was actually aiding and abetting the Ottoman Empire, that he was actually helping Russia's very, very own enemies. So they came during the holidays to Rabbi Zalman's house and they arrested him. And they put him into prison and they accused him of aiding and abetting the enemy and being a state enemy of the Tsar. While he was in prison, Rabishna Zman prayed hard that he would be saved, and his Hasidim did everything they possibly could. They tell a very famous story of his Hasidim when they rallied together to get him out of prison. They went, they automatically organized that one group should go to the Tsar and plead for his case. Another group was organized to pray for him, and another group knew that they needed money to buy time and to buy a lawyer, so they went around collecting money. They came to this particular Hasid in Moscow, a big city in Russia, and they said to him, listen, sir, we need help and we need support. And this Hasid, who was not known for being very charitable, he was actually being known as a miser, he said to them, listen, gentlemen, I would rather poke out my eyes than give charity. This is what a kind of a miser he was. But Reb Zalman is more precious to me than both of my eyes. So I'm going to turn around and you take whatever you need. That was, at that point, the urgency of how the Hasidim felt in order to save their rabbi. While Rabbi Zalman was in prison, he was being interrogated by one of the Russian counselors. And the Russian counselor turned to Rabbi Zalman and he said to him, Rabbi, are you a religious man? And Rabbi Zalman said, of course. Do you believe in the Bible? And he said, absolutely. And do you believe the Bible is divine? Absolutely was the answer. So tell me, Rabbi, I have a question to ask you. In the first part of Genesis, do you remember that part, Rabbi? He said, yes, I do. He said, in the first part of Genesis, Adam and Eve sinned by eating from the fruit of the tree that God forbade them to. Yes, I remember that, said Rabbi Zalman. And Adam hid. Correct, that's true. What was the first word God used after he searched out Adam and Eve? And the rabbi said, God said, Ayeka, where are you? So the Russian looked at the rabbi with a smirk as if being so smart, and he said, Rabbi, you just told me that you believe God knows everything. So why did he have to say Ayeka? Why did he have to ask Adam, where are you? God knew where he was. He didn't have to ask Adam where he was. So this proves that God is not all-powerful. And if God is not all-powerful, this proves that your religion is nonsense. And the rabbi looked at him and he said, you know what Ayeka means? Do you know what God was saying? And this is the message that Reb Zalman told this Russian interrogator, the Russian prosecutor. He said to him, when a man lives 52 years, and that was exactly as old as the prosecutor was, a man lives 52 years on this world, God comes to him and says, Ayeka, where are you? What have you done? I've given you 52 years here on earth, and what have you accomplished? Have you made this world a better place? Or have you made this world a worse place? And Rabbi Zalman looked straight into the prosecutor's eyes, and with a very sharp look, he said to my friend, and what about you? What have you done? God is turning to you and saying, Ayeka, how are you? Where are you? What have you done for me lately? When the prosecutor heard this and saw this spiritual aura that came over Rabishna Zman, he backed off. And from then on, he had a tremendous respect for this rabbi, because he knew that this was a great spiritual leader. But here it was, what happened was that on the 19th day, which is coming up of the month of Kislev, good news broke out. The Tsar had rescinded the death sentence. Rabishna Zalman was free to leave. When Rabishna Zalman came back to his house, Another interesting story took place. What happened is that he was told to go to 1031 Amelia Drive in Petersburg. What happened was that he made a mistake and went to 1033, which was downstairs. He was supposed to go upstairs. Who lived downstairs? This tremendous opponent of Reb Zalman. And when he saw that he had Reb Zalman in his clutches, he put him into the kitchen and he berated him for 2 hours. He yelled at him. While his followers were up there waiting for the rabbi to return from prison, they were waiting anxiously. They didn't know what to do. They figured maybe the rabbi made a mistake and he went downstairs. And they knocked on the door and they saw the rabbi sitting in the kitchen being berated by this opponent of the Hasidic movement. They ran in and they rescued the rabbi. And the rabbi later said, it was worse for me hearing a Jew talk like this to me than sitting in prison. That's how bad it was. But on that day, a tremendous rejoicing happened in the Chabad community. Rabbi Zalman was free. Our rabbi was able to teach again his thoughts on the Hasidic movement. It became a wonderful, wonderful holiday. And every year we, in our community, celebrate the 19th day of Kislev as the Rosh Hashanah, as the new year of the Hasidic movement. This is how special it is. Let me ask you, what does the Hasidic movement espouse? What did Rabishna Zman write that was so controversial that he had to be put into prison? All he wrote is, everybody is equal. No one is different in the eyes of the Lord. Everybody has a right, and not only has a right, but has a responsibility to worship God. And if you don't know how, that doesn't give you any out. You must seek out, go and learn. Start with the Aleph base, start with the alphabet. And you, on the other hand, my friend, if you know an A and your friend doesn't know an A, you must teach him an A. He had just recently published a book called the Tanya. The Tanya is the fundamental, the Bible of the Hasidic movement, the greatest philosophy written by any Hasidic rabbi. And it is based on the works of the Kabbalah. You might have heard of the word Kabbalah because it's very in vogue right now in America to talk about Kabbalah. Some even stars in Hollywood are studying Kabbalah. But Rabishna Zman wrote the real Kabbalah. And in his book, he outlined a path, a way, a direction that a person, regardless whether you're Jewish or you're not Jewish, that if any person wanted to reach the highest level of spirituality that they can reach, all they had to do was just study the Tanya. This is what it's all about. In the first part of the book, the Alter Rebbe outlines what a person is made of. You look at me and say, what do you mean what a person is made of? We know what a person is made of. It's bones and blood and sinews and arteries and a heart and organs. No, my friend. That's not what I'm talking about. What I mean, what is going on inside a person, spiritually, the soul. Oh, the soul, you may ask. What does that have to do with my everyday living? Because many of us are so busy worrying about satisfying our body that we forget about what lives in our heart, the soul. So the Alter Rebbe, Reb Zalman, outlines in the first few chapters of a book is what are we made of? What constitutes our soul? And he talks about the 5 different levels of people. He talks about the great sages, the Moseses of the world, the King Davids of the world, the great prophets of the world, that they were very high, great spiritual people. Then the smaller sages, and then about the wicked people, and the very, very wicked people in the Bible, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, all of those very wicked people. Then the less wicked people, and then the average Beinoni, the average person. And the Alter Rebbe said, I want to talk to this average person. I want to talk to you because you have the opportunity and the ability, if only you want to rise up and to be the most observant religious person that you could possibly be. He quoted from a verse in the Bible that says that Moses said to all of the Jewish people that were gathered in the desert, that this matter that I speak to you today, to keep the laws of the Torah, to be observant in the ways of the Lord, to cleave onto the Lord, and to attach yourself to Him, is very easy for you to do. When the people looked at him and they said, what do you mean very easy? You think it's easy keeping kosher here, my friends? You know how many restaurants there are here in Long Beach, California? Hundreds, thousands probably. Certainly hundreds, many hundreds of restaurants. No kosher restaurant. So what do you mean to me it's going to be very easy? I got to drive up to LA to get a kosher hamburger. That's not so easy. And what's so easy about keeping the Sabbath? That for 25 hours, you can't use the telephone, you can't do this, you can't do that. By the time the 24th hour comes along, you want to pull your hair out of your head. No. The Alter Rebbe of Zalman writes in the Tanya that it is easy because what I'm focusing on is I'm focusing on all of the negative things. Of course, then it becomes difficult. But if you focus on the positive matters, if you understand what your makeup is, if you know that you're made up of a soul, and that soul yearns to be free, that soul yearns to breathe the air of spirituality, then it's not that difficult anymore. All you have to realize, my friend, is that there's always going to be a battle going on inside of us. And as Reb Zalman writes in chapters 2, 3, and 4, that within ourselves we have a good inclination. The good inclination is what we call the goody-goody, the good angel, the angel that comes down and tells us that we have to do everything right, that you have to honor your parents, that you have to be kind to your grandparents, you have to be nice to your friends, not to gossip, not to steal, not to lie, not to bear grudges. I mean, all of the things that we naturally want to do. We want to bear a grudge, right? You know, we're sitting in class and there's always this one wise guy. We can't stand this guy. We're jealous. We try to do everything to knock him down. That's wrong. And the good angel, the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination, is every day bandering and bandering inside of you and fighting with you to tell you how you can become a better person. Since God gave us free choice, since God did not make us angels, and there would be no purpose to the creation of the world and to Him giving the Torah if we did not have free choice, He also gave us on the left side of the heart what is called the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. And this evil inclination, my friends, is vicious. Oh, this evil inclination knows you better than you know yourself. It knows all of your idiosyncrasies. It knows all of your weaknesses. It knows how to trip you up better than you know how to trip yourself up. So when you're going down the street and you see that ice cream and you know in your mind, nah, I don't need it, I shouldn't have it, it's bad for me, that evil inclination gets to work on you, but come on, it's such a warm, beautiful day here. Come on, what's it going to hurt? Go in there, buy that ice cream, go get it. And then it works and works on you until you know what? You succumb to the powers of the evil inclination. Ice cream is not that bad, all right? But it gets you to do worse. It gets you to steal. It gets you to commit adultery. It gets you to do things that when you think back and you say to yourself, how stupid was I? How did I make that decision? I'm so crazy. Ask every criminal in prison. He'll tell you the same thing. They were stupid. They were dumb. It was a moment of weakness. But that moment of weakness comes about because we allow it to come about. Why do we make bad decisions? Because we allow that left side of our heart to overpower the good inclination and to work its way into our minds and into our hearts, and then cause us, the person who was supposed to be running the show in your life, to do something that you're going to be very, very ashamed of later on. But we don't think about it because it's the moment of self-gratification. And if it gives us pleasure right now, we don't care because it's instant. And in the United States of America, boy oh boy do we love instant. We love instant coffee, we love the internet, we love television that comes on instantly, we want instant gratification, instant salvation, instant, everything is instant here in America. And that's what he talks about. And Reb Zalman writes in the first few chapters of his book called the Tanya, that if you realize this, if you know in your heart of hearts that you are always having this battle between the good inclination and the bad inclination, then you prepare yourself. Then what you do is you start to study and you grow in your spirituality and you do things that you know, that you exercise, just like a wrestler. When you get into the ring, it's not going to be the one that's strongest that's going to win the bout. No, it's going to be the one that's more motivated. And someone that's listless, someone that's unmotivated and doesn't have any passion, they're going to go down. And that's what the Alter Rebbe writes in the Tanya. That's what Reb Schneier, what Reb Zalman writes in the book, that if we want to be victorious, if we as human beings, regardless of what religion you are, if we want to be able to live our life full of spirituality and of goodness and of fulfillment, because don't think for a moment that, you look out in the world and you see many rich, wealthy, powerful people that have no spirituality in their life, and we think to ourselves, why do I need to go to temple? Why do I need to go and study at night? Why do I need to be bound with all of these commandments? Look at that guy. He doesn't do anything, and yet he receives all of the riches of the world. Make no mistake, it's a false world. He's not any happier, and he's not, trust me, don't do that. But you need to worry about your own spiritual growth. You follow the works of the Tanya. You take the step-by-step approach that every single day you do something that is going to make you stronger and exercise. It doesn't come overnight. It's not going to be instantaneous, and it's not going to become instant. What's going to happen is that after a long, long while, after doing strenuous work, you are actually going to see fruits of your labor. You're going to appreciate that by helping somebody else, that by praying in the morning and really praying, because Hasidim and Reb Zalman were very, very much into this passionate prayer, that if you go into a Hasidic house of worship, you'll see people singing and dancing and rejoicing in their connection with the Almighty. And if you truly want to, Reb Zalman said, if you really, really, really want to, there's nothing that stands in your way. If you want it, you're able to grab it. All you need to do is to follow all of these steps, one little by little by little, and you strengthen your resolve to grow every single day. And this is why on the 19th day of the month of Kislev, every single year we have this big party. It's not a party with banners and flower. No, it's a party where we sit down and we reflect. We think about all of those ideals that Reb Zalman stood for, and we reorganize and we rededicate ourselves to his principles. Thank you very much. I hope I gave you a little bit of insight into a world that most of you never really think about. Until next time, God bless you. I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Hashem, ben chatzoi serkinu yafrichu,